Welcome to our deep dive. Today we're tackling multifamily housing design,
Oh, exciting.
using some YouTube videos you sent over.
Cool.
We've got lectures from architects in Argentina and Spain,
Sounds great.
plus we'll take a look at an awesome project in Japan.
Yeah, I saw that one. I'm interested to hear your take on it.
Me too. I think we're going to see some really different approaches.
Oh, definitely. There's so many ways to design this type of building.
Yeah, and it's not just like cramming as many units in as possible, right?
Totally, you got it. It's so much more than just maximizing space.
So much more. What are we going to uncover today?
Well, we're going to look at how architects deal with limited space, of course.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
But we'll also dig into the need for community in these buildings.
Community, yeah, that's key.
And even things like, how do you incorporate cars without sacrificing walkability?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Okay, so before we get into specific buildings,
Sure.
can you give us a quick overview of the basic elements of multifamily housing design? Like, what are the things architects have to consider?
Think of it like a system.
A system.
Yeah, a network of interconnected subsystems.
Okay, I'm listening.
So you've got movement, right? Circulation, how people move through the building.
Okay, movement.
Then you've got the layout of the units themselves.
Makes sense.
The structure, like how it's built.
The guts of the building.
Exactly. And then how the building fits into the surrounding neighborhood, the urban fabric.
So it's not just what's happening inside.
No, it's all connected.
It's all about context. I get it.
Yay.
Now, one of the lectures mentioned something called the Law of the Indies.
Yeah.
It talked about how that impacted Latin American cities. Can you explain that a bit?
So the Law of the Indies was it was a set of rules for urban planning
Okay.
established by the Spanish crown way back in the 16th century.
Wow, going way back.
It really pushed the use of the grid system in Latin America.
Like a checkerboard layout for the streets.
Exactly. Consistent street and block layouts.
So that was efficient.
Very efficient. But, it also kind of shaped how those cities developed.
I can imagine. For better or for worse.
Definitely both.
Interesting. A seemingly simple concept with long-lasting consequences.
You got it.
So how does this grid system connect to modern housing?
Well, it set the stage, right? But in the early 1900s, you had architects like Le Corbusier.
Oh, Le Corbusier, the big name.
He shook things up with his radiant city concept.
Radiant City.
High-rise buildings surrounded by green space, prioritizing light and air circulation.
That's pretty utopian.
It was a vision, that's for sure, and it led to new building materials and construction techniques.
So taller buildings were finally possible.
Exactly. But, some people weren't so thrilled about it.
Really, why not?
Well, they worried it would isolate residents, from street life.
Oh, yeah, like losing that connection to the neighborhood.
Exactly. And that tension, that balance between efficient housing and a strong sense of community, that's something we'll see pop up again and again.
It's a theme. It makes me think about those massive housing projects from the mid-20th century,
Uh-oh.
some of which became infamous for social problems.
Yes. Some of the designs, well, they didn't really consider the social side of things.
Yeah, I can see how that could go wrong.
It did in some cases.
Yeah.
That led to a counter-movement, people pushing back.
Who are they?
Notably, a group of architects known as Team 10. They emerged in the 1950s.
Team 10, okay.
They were all about a more humane approach, putting community first.
So kind of the opposite of Le Corbusier's high-rise vision.
In a way, yes. They championed things like streets in the sky.
Streets in the sky.
Basically, elevated walkways and open spaces within the building.
Oh, to encourage interaction.
Exactly. So people could connect without leaving the building.
That's pretty clever, bringing the street life up into the building itself.
Right.
Okay, I'm ready to see how these concepts actually play out in real buildings.
Me too. Let's go.
Let's start in Argentina. Have you heard of the Edificio Alicia?
Oh, yes. Beautiful building.
Designed by Fermín Berrettebad back in 1925.
Mm-hmm.
The pictures make it look more like a palace than an apartment building.
I know, right? It's a great example of how beauty and functionality can work together.
How so?
Well, it's designed in the picturesque style, emphasizes asymmetry and connection to nature.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Lots of variety in the facade, different window shapes and sizes, green spaces softening the look.
That's lovely.
And Berrettebad managed to weave in modern amenities too, like there's a kindergarten, even a theater,
Wow, that's impressive.
all while keeping that old world charm. It's something to think about, for your own design ideas.
Blending the old and the new, I like it.
It can work really well.
Now, what I find really interesting is how it incorporates cars
Yeah.
at ground level, but it doesn't sacrifice pedestrian space.
Right. Beretta put garages on the ground floor, basically creating a buffer.
Oh, I see. Between the street and the people inside.
Exactly. Dedicated walkways, a sense of openness.
Smart. Cars and pedestrians coexisting peacefully.
That's the goal. Shows you that it can be done with some clever planning.
Beretta was ahead of his time.
Yeah, Edificio Alucia really shows you how to create a beautiful and functional building.
It tackles the needs of a modern city, but in a way that's still human-centered.
Exactly.
Okay, so Argentina is clearly a place to watch for innovative housing.
Definitely.
Now let's jump across the Atlantic to Spain. They've got some really cool projects going on in Madrid.
Oh, yeah, they're doing some exciting stuff.
One that caught my eye is the Viviendas in Carabanchel.
Ah, yes, the boxes in the air.
Tell me about those.
So those boxes, they're entire living spaces, cantilevered out from the main building.
Hang right out there.
Yep. It's bold, creates this dynamic facade. Definitely unconventional.
It reminds me of, what was it called? The Wozoko apartments in the Netherlands.
Yes. Also uses cantilevered units. Really striking.
It's all about challenging the norm.
Totally. Pushing the boundaries.
I'm curious about what it's like to actually live in one of those cantilevered spaces, though.
That's a great question. You know, it can be really unique, often creates a feeling of openness, connection to the outside.
That's nice.
But there are also concerns about privacy and stability.
Makes sense. You're kind of hanging out there.
Yeah, it's a trade-off for sure.
While I admire the boldness of the design, I can also see how that style might not be for everyone.
You're right. It's definitely not for everyone.
Did Spain offer any examples that were a little more well-grounded?
Absolutely. The same architects who did Viviendas in Carabanchel.
Oh, really?
They also designed a project called 80 Viviendas in Carabanchel.
Okay. Another one in the same area.
Yeah, this one was finished in 2010. It's more traditional, but still efficient.
Traditional and efficient. What's the look?
Clean, modern facade, but with a playful use of color.
I like that.
Breaks up the monotony, keeps things practical, but fun.
Function doesn't have to mean boring.
Exactly.
So Spain is giving us both extremes, avant-garde,
Yeah.
and playful yet practical.
Yeah, they're covering all the bases.
Okay, before we jump into our deep dive on the Japanese project,
Okay.
are there any other notable global examples you think we should mention?
Oh, there are tons, but two in Copenhagen come to mind.
Oh, Copenhagen, always at the forefront of design.
The VM houses, by big architects, they feature sloped streets.
Sloped streets inside the building.
Yeah, they weave through the building like walkways. Really cool.
Wow, that sounds unique.
It helps make a large building feel less isolating.
Interesting approach. What was the other one?
Also in Copenhagen, the mountain dwellings, again, by big,
These guys are busy.
they've got these terraced residences cascading down a hillside.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
And underneath, a huge parking structure, but it's hidden.
Oh, clever. So they're making a statement about cars.
Yeah, it's a visual representation of that tension between cars and community space.
I'm sensing a theme here. Accommodating the automobile without ruining the living experience.
It's a challenge, that's for sure.
Okay, well, speaking of navigating that challenge,
Yes.
that brings us to our deep dive. Nexus World Housing in Fukuoka, Japan.
Can't wait.
Designed by
Busy.
Stephen Hall. Should be interesting.
It will be.
But I think we've covered a lot of ground already.
Oh, we have.
Maybe it's time for a little break before we jump into the Japanese masterpiece.
Sounds good.
We'll be back in a flash.
Welcome back. Ready to dive into Nexus World?
I am. It looks like a really interesting project.
It is. It's all about that balance between individual spaces and a strong sense of community.
A theme we keep coming back to. What makes Nexus World stand out?
Well, the layout is super unique, the way it encourages interaction.
How so?
Imagine this. 28 units arranged around 4 courtyards.
So courtyards, okay.
And each courtyard is positioned to get the most sunlight.
Oh, smart.
They're designed as tranquil spaces, for meditation, relaxation,
It's peaceful.
with a mix of paved areas and water features. Very Japanese.
Like a Zen garden almost.
Exactly. But, 28 units isn't that big of a complex.
True. So what makes it more than just a small apartment building?
It's how these courtyards are connected. Hull created a system of elevated corridors.
More doors connecting the courtyards.
Yeah. 3 of them, they weave through the whole building.
Wow, I'm picturing it.
So as you walk through, you're constantly experiencing these shifts in light and shadow, open and closed spaces.
Sounds almost like a choreographed experience.
It is a journey through the building.
I love that. Did Hull design the units with a specific type of resident in mind?
Actually, there are 18 different unit variations in Nexus World.
18. That's a lot of choice for small development.
It is, and it shows how important flexibility and customization are in housing.
I can see that. Everyone has different needs.
Right, so residents can choose a space that really fits their lifestyle.
That's amazing. Were these variations designed for specific demographics, or is it more like pick what you like?
A bit of both, I'd say. Some are tailored to specific needs.
Okay.
But the goal is to give residents choices, personalize their living experience.
All about that sweet spot between personal space and shared experience.
Exactly. That's part of what makes Nexus World so successful.
It all makes sense. We've talked a lot about the layout and the concept.
Yeah.
What about the materials used? Is it all glass and steel, super modern?
Actually, no. It's mostly load-bearing concrete walls.
Concrete. Interesting choice.
It gives a sense of solidity, simplicity.
I can see that. Concrete can sometimes feel a bit cold, though, right?
It can, but Hall balanced it out. There's a secondary structure of pillars.
Okay, adding some visual interest.
Right. And he used natural light really well through those courtyards.
So it's not just gray concrete everywhere?
Nope. There are also warm wood accents throughout, softening the look.
Well, I like that.
And of course, those courtyards with the greenery, the water features, they make the whole space feel more welcoming.
It sounds really well balanced.
It is. It shows that concrete can be beautiful and functional.
I am convinced. Nexus World seems to hit all the points we've been talking about.
It does. Community, customization, connection to nature.
It's like a textbook example of what good multifamily housing can be.
You could say that. And it really highlights this idea of flexibility.
Flexibility, another key theme. Can you remind us what that means in this context?
So flexibility in design means that the spaces can adapt, as residents' needs change over time.
Future-proofing, basically.
Exactly. Like Rem Koolhaas's Villa de Lava.
Okay, I've heard of that one.
It's got this open plan with movable partitions so you can reconfigure the space as needed.
Like a giant puzzle.
Kinda. It's much more dynamic than a fixed layout.
I get it. But with all that flexibility, wouldn't it be easy to create a space that feels chaotic or inefficient?
That's where fixed points come in.
Fixed points, okay.
Things like kitchens, bathrooms, circulation cores.
Oh yeah, the essentials.
They provide structure, a framework within a flexible layout.
So you're anchoring the space.
Right. And then the areas around them can be adapted, personalized.
Balance. Always about balance. Do you have any other examples of how these ideas work in real designs?
The ABS system is a good one.
ABS, like anti-lock brakes.
Not quite. It stands for Armario Baño Cocina.
Okay, wardrobe, bathroom, kitchen, I see.
It's a Spanish system, focuses on minimalist design for those core functions.
So you have more space for flexible living areas.
Exactly. Perfect for smaller units or people who prioritize open space.
I like that. It's about being clever and efficient with the essentials.
Exactly. It shows that you can have it all: style, functionality, and adaptability.
You just have to think outside the box a little bit.
You got it. Whether you prefer bold designs like Viviendas in Carabanchel or serene spaces like Nexus World,
There's a way to make it work.
there is.
I'm really starting to see multifamily buildings in a new light now.
That's great. As you watch those videos, keep an eye out for these concepts.
I will. It's amazing how these seemingly small design choices can have such a big impact on how we live.
They really can. But before we get too carried away with the aesthetics,
Okay.
let's bring it back to the bigger picture. What are some of the key takeaways for you?
Well, one thing that really stands out is the diversity of approaches.
Yeah, so many different styles and solutions.
But there are these common threads, these key elements that make a multifamily project successful.
Absolutely.
It's about finding that balance between functionality and inspiration.
You said it. We've seen the importance of flexibility, the smart use of fixed points, and those points of interest that elevate the whole experience.
It's like a recipe with the right ingredients.
It is, and these concepts apply no matter the style or location of the project.
So it's not just about aesthetics, it's about how people actually live in these spaces.
Exactly. And as we move into the future, these ideas will become even more important.
I can see that. With cities growing, sustainability concerns, changing lifestyles.
Architects have a lot to consider.
They do. This deep dive has been so insightful, it's changed my perspective.
That's great to hear.
But before we wrap things up, I have one final question for you.
Shoot.
In a world that's constantly changing, how can architects create multifamily housing that's both functional and inspiring?
The million-dollar question. There's no easy answer, but I think the projects we looked at today offer some clues.
Like what? What are the essential ingredients?
We've seen the power of community-focused design, prioritizing flexibility, incorporating sustainable practices.
Yeah, those are all important.
But maybe the most crucial element is understanding people.
People.
Yeah, understanding their needs, their desires, how they live and interact with their surroundings.
Designing for people, not just buildings.
Exactly. The best projects are the ones that really get that combine function with a deep understanding of human behavior.
And the desire for connection, comfort, beauty.
All of that.
I'm feeling inspired to learn more about this balancing act.
That's the spirit. Architecture is constantly evolving. There's always something new to discover.
That's the beauty of it. Okay, before we sign off, there's one more thing I want to touch on.
Okay.
We haven't really talked about the role of politics in shaping housing design.
Ah, yes, that's an important aspect.
It is. How does the political landscape impact what gets built and where?
Well, politics and housing are intertwined, Government policies, funding, zooming regulations, it all plays a role.
Architects aren't just working in a vacuum. They're responding to these external forces.
Right, and those forces can be really powerful. Did any of the source material address this?
It did. The Spanish lecture talked about how government initiatives can actually drive innovation in social housing.
Interesting.
They mentioned Spain's investment in recent years, creating high-quality, affordable housing.
Affordable housing is such a big issue everywhere.
It is.
Yeah.
Did they give any concrete examples of how Spain is approaching it?
Yeah, they showed some projects in Madrid, actually one we talked about, the Viviendas in Carabanchel.
Oh, right, the one with the cantilevered units.
Yep. These projects show a commitment to good design, sustainability, affordability.
It's not just about building the cheapest option.
No, it's about investing in quality and community.
It's a shift from the old way of thinking about affordable housing.
It is. The Spanish example shows that when governments prioritize these things and invest in thoughtful design,
It can really make a difference.
it can transform communities, foster social inclusion, improve people's lives.
That's a powerful message. It makes me wonder, are there any common threads when we look at how different political systems approach housing?
It's a tough question, but I think collaboration is key.
Collaboration.
Yeah, you need partnerships between government, developers, community groups, and of course, architects.
Everyone working together.
Exactly. Open dialogue, shared goals, a commitment to finding solutions that benefit everyone.
That sounds ideal.
It's the best way to create housing that's truly sustainable and thriving.
Okay, well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have. From architectural styles to social considerations to the political side of things.
It's been a whirlwind tour of multifamily housing.
It has. But remember, this is just the start. Keep exploring those videos, research what interests you, and look at your own community with fresh eyes.
I will. Thanks for sharing your expertise with us. It's been an eye-opening conversation.
You're welcome. Keep those design ideas flowing and never stop questioning the world around you.
To our listener, thanks for joining us on this architectural adventure. We hope you've gained some new insights and a fresh perspective on the places we call home.
And be sure to check out those YouTube videos for even more inspiration.
Until next time, stay curious. That Nexus World project, really something else.
Yeah, amazing how those little design choices can make such a big difference.
Like you said, it creates that sense of community.
Exactly. Even in a smaller building.
It makes you think about all the other stuff that influences housing design, stuff we haven't really touched on.
Oh, like what?
Well, like politics, for example. How does the political landscape affect what gets built?
Ah, good point. Politics and housing, they're definitely connected.
Right. I mean, government policies, funding, zoning laws, all that stuff.
All of it. It shapes what architects can actually do.
It's a whole other layer to consider. Did any of the lectures talk about that political side?
Yeah, the Spanish one did.
What did they say?
Well, they talked about how government initiatives can actually lead to innovation, especially in social housing.
Interesting.
They mentioned Spain's investments in recent years, trying to create more affordable housing options.
Affordable housing, that's a huge issue everywhere.
It is, and people always worry about design compromises.
Right, like you have to sacrifice quality to make it affordable.
Exactly. But the Spanish lecture, they showed some examples that challenge that assumption.
Oh, really? Like what?
They talked about some projects in Madrid, actually one we already mentioned, the Viviendas in Carabanchel.
The one with the boxes, yeah.
They're showing that you can have good design, sustainability, and affordability.
All in one package.
Exactly. It's about investing in quality, creating communities, not just building the cheapest thing possible.
That's a good point. Seems like a different way of thinking about affordable housing.
It is. The Spanish example is really encouraging,
It is. It makes you think, Are there any lessons we can learn from how different political systems handle housing?
That's a tough question. It's complicated, but I think collaboration is always important.
Collaboration between who?
Everyone, government, developers, community groups, architects, you need all those perspectives.
To make sure everyone's needs are met.
Yeah, it's got to be a holistic approach.
So it's not just about the building itself.
No, it's about the whole context, the community, the bigger picture.
It sounds like we've only scratched the surface of this topic.
We have. There's always more to learn about multifamily housing.
I feel like I have a whole new perspective now. It's more than just aesthetics, it's about people's lives.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so fascinating, you know?
It is. Well, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive.
Time flies when you're talking about architecture.
It does. Thanks for taking us on this journey. It's been really eye-opening.
My pleasure. Keep exploring, keep questioning, you know?
I will. And to our listener, thanks for joining us on this adventure. We hope you've enjoyed it.
We hope you've learned something new, maybe see your own neighborhood a little differently.
Until next time, stay curious.